welcome. This is Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily here, and I'm very, very fortunate to be joined by Isaac Rodriguez, the director, writer of Last Radio Call. So Isaac, pleasure to have you, and why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Thanks. Yeah, I've been doing film for probably around 13 years now, maybe. I'd originally started doing, little short horror films and things like that. And I did that for a few years. And, I've always done the, horror genre. And, after a while, I started kind of graduating from the short films and then going to, the longer formats. And that's kind of where I'm at today.
Excellent. Yeah, I know you. I was looking up a bit about you, and you've done quite a few shorts, won quite a few awards, and I think some folks out there are probably familiar with your No Sleep channel.
Yeah.
So a lot of work in that space and a lot of found footage, which will kind of bring us into the first question I have for you. We had a chance to watch Last Radio Call, and congratulations on the production and distribution coming up soon here.
Thank you.
What was your inspiration for Last Radio Call?
I think it's based off a short film we had. It was called The Cop Cam, and we released that around 2016, and it was a huge viral hit. It even got featured in a TV show in Japan, and so I'd been wanting to make something based off The Cop Cam, but I didn't want to make it like a full-fledged body cam movie because it can get old after a while. And so I was watching another found footage film called it's Japanese, Nori, The Curse. And I just loved how they used, it kind of felt like an episode of the X-Files. They were investigating, talking to people, and just, they had little segments with the audio. And I just loved how kind of like cut up it was and fragmented in these like, different mediums of media. And so I just wanted to do something similar. It's funny though, when I watched it, I thought they had made it for a super low budget, and that kind of inspired me. But it turns out that movie was made for like 2 or 3 million, so not as low budget as I thought. But luckily it had inspired me to go make this movie.
Yeah, I think it's. I definitely think that with low budget, we've gotten a lot more of opportunities for folks to stand out, and it's a lot. Democratization of filmmaking, something we've talked about in the past with other filmmakers like yourself, where it lowers the barrier of entry, which means that you have a flood of more creativity. And at the same time, with found footage, it almost feels like overproduction works against the aesthetic. If you have something that feels like it's almost too produced, it takes away from what really is the horror of found footage, which is the sense of you're watching something that is supposed to bring you into the reality of the film the theme of the film is creating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And when one of the things that sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, I was just gonna go off on that. There's some of the bigger budget found footage films. Yeah, there's definitely a problem of like overproduction, and it starts to lose that realism.
And I don't know what your first experience in found footage films was. I was fortunate enough and old enough. I'm at the age where I was old enough to be able to see the Blair Witch Project in the theater when it was having that very short, like art house run that it did with a lot of, around near a lot of college campuses. So I'm curious, what was your first experience with a found footage film?
Yeah, it was actually the same, the Blair Witch Project. And me and my cousins we had like faintly heard about it, and we went to go see it in the theater, and we all thought it was 100% real. Like there was no internet. There was internet back then, but not enough where sites, there's no social media saying it's fake, and so we all went into that thinking it was real. And I remember my cousin, he said he couldn't sleep that night. Like he had to turn the light on because that's how much it freaked him out. But yeah, it's hard I don't think any other film will ever, replicate that. I think Paranormal Activity kind of came close, but there was still, people still kind of knew it was fake. But yeah, the Blair Witch is what kind of set off the journey for me.
Yeah, that's one of the few films that did get to me. I'm Blair Witch because, as you said,
Mhm.
it exists in a time that was well before the internet was seen as like the access to the internet was still somewhat limited, and the campaign and marketing that went behind it really did bring you into this lore that they were trying to create, which I think
Yeah,
worked really well. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear that you shared similar experiences with it. And as I was
yeah.
watching Last Radio Call, I really like the idea of the Red Sister. It's such an interesting kind of new, and it seems to be a new mythology. I did a very light
Mhm.
googling, so I may not have hit those final pages of where you might have found it, but it seems like original creation. Is that a fair statement?
So yeah, the Red Sisters is totally a new creation. In the beginning, I thought about kind of doing a standard, a real kind of Native American myth, but I feel like nowadays there's so many movies coming out with the same kind of scary creature or ghost, and it has the antlers and the leaves, and it's so I just really wanted to do something new, and and it's a lot more fun, kind of coming up with your own, you know, story and creature and all that.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think I would agree with you that we're living in a time where there is a lot of reference to people it's almost a competition to try and see if
Hmm.
you can find that obscure lore that exists that no one's tapped into
Yeah,
yet, or if you can do it differently. Like, I mean, Antlers, I think, is the most recent example of one tapping into something that's been done
yeah,
many a time. But I really did like and appreciate the way you portrayed the Red Sister, and also created some sense of mythology around it, because I picked up on the indigenous connections and the Native American connections
hmm,
you were making with it. So it's
yeah,
always nice to see creators taking the extra step to not only put something original out there, but also do so with an invention or the creature or mythology that they might that's of their own design. Now, do you plan on doing more with the Red Sister, or do you see this as really a one-off with Last Radio Call?
yeah. I kind of left it at the end of the movie. I kind of left it open where there is a possibility that there could be a sequel, and we'll have to see kind of how it goes. So far the reception has been pretty good, so I think there could very possibly be a Red Sister kind of focused sequel or prequel, possibly.
Yeah, I think sometimes when it's very on occasion you get some interesting new designs or characters that you actually want more of, and I
Mhm.
found myself thinking,
Yeah,
there's a lot. You set up enough groundwork, I think, where you leave enough for folks to be able to latch onto for the purpose of the film, but if you wanted to, you could
yeah,
easily explore it further. So I love that, and again, picking up on that, we watch a lot of horror films, so it's not all the time you get something that's not
mhm,
only a new mythos, but also something that has even more that could be done with it. And one of the most
yeah,
striking aspects of Last Radio Call really is the setting. I mean, it's I will admittedly say I will never ever set foot in an abandoned hospital of any kind, largely because the setting itself just
yeah,
freaks me out. But I was curious to hear
yeah.
about, how did you find the Yorktown Hospital location, and what was it like filming in there?
So we had originally filmed another short film called let's see, what was it? I think it was I forgot the name, but we shot another short film at a place called the Black Swan Inn, and it's a big haunted like kind of mansion in San Antonio, Texas. Well, for some reason, the owner of the Black Swan Inn, I guess they collect like haunted houses or big haunted places, and so um, uh, she told us that she also had bought this haunted hospital, and they do daily tours there. Like anyone can go any day of the week, and you can go in there and tour it. And so yeah, we just booked it, and you know I had been there before a year prior to kind of scout it and check it out, and it did. We went during the day, so it didn't seem that creepy. But for some reason, I don't know if it was like the anxiety of the filming or not, but when we went to go film there, when we walked in, it had just rained the night before, so it was humid. There was water everywhere, and me and several other people, we felt like we couldn't breathe. And this was especially there's a basement area, and when you went down there, I mean, you felt like you couldn't breathe, and we, like me and another person, we had to like just get out of there because it was like too much. But another weird kind of thing was Billy, the tall guy who plays the Red Sister. He had these two red marks on him, like two circles, and he was saying like he couldn't figure out where they came from. And so you know, when we were leaving, someone's car on the window, someone had put the two red circles on the car window, and I was like, that's kind of weird. I didn't think any too much of it at the time because I was, you know, my head was kind of spinning. But like the weirdest part was, you know, I was looking at some pictures for the movie, and this was pictures I'd taken a year ago, when I first scouted it. And I was going through the pictures, and you know, on one of the pictures, I had to like pause because I was like, what, you know, what the hell is this? And on the window of the building, it was those same two like circles. So I mean, I don't know if it's coincidence or what, but that was just kind of like a freaky moment, you know, going to those pictures from a year earlier and seeing that same, you know, symbol. But yeah, other than that, one kind of creepy thing, another creepy thing is, you know, when we were about to shoot, the owner had gathered us all up, and he's like, hey, there's been kids, they sneak in at night, and they've been terrorizing like the ghost hunters. Like they had, I guess a few weeks earlier, they had some ghost hunters, and they were terrorizing them, like screaming. And he was like, if you hear anyone like banging on the windows, call the police. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it was just, I mean, it was a crazy shoot. I mean, we already had, you know, I think we shot like 25 pages worth of the movie in one night. And so it was already a stressful, like long night. And then it's like, yeah, by the way, you know, these kids might come terrorize you. So yeah, it was a crazy shoot, and I'm just glad to have survived it and got what we need.
Wow. I mean, again, that's you're basically giving the reasons why I will never go into abandoned hospitals. But I think
Yeah.
that almost, you know, atmosphere in movies, and particularly found footage, really is almost as important as everything else, because you know, you really are kind of in the first person view for much of it, and or in this case, the interview style approach you take to intercut in between.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the atmosphere absolutely works to accentuate. And just hearing about the production behind it, Texas is no stranger to interesting locations and very stressful filmmaking sets. It's almost as if you're in good company with Tobe Hooper and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre production by having a really strange location with almost abnormal circumstances. Now, when you think about the found footage genre, you know, what is it that draws you specifically to that as a filmmaker? What connects with you in a way? Because I think of many of your feature films, most of them in the found footage as well as the shorts that you I think it's over 70 shorts. So, you know, what's been your draw to the format, and why is it something that you've been, you know, so inspired by?
I think found footage, it just has this magic where, you know, if, you know, I can go in an old creepy looking house with just a camera and a light, and, you know, I can say there's something hiding in the closet, and the closet might open a little bit and we see nothing. But then it's just the realism of the camera and the whole, the look and everything. It just brings a realism that I find it hard to find with bigger traditional films. You know, there's, you know, some of the horror films nowadays, they're so, you know, big, and there's, you know, crazy lighting and all that, and it just doesn't do anything for me anymore. But there's just something about the found, like there's like, I'll see little clips of things on YouTube or, you know, TikTok of people going to a cemetery in the middle of the night, and they just have their cell phone and a flashlight, and we hear something, you know, moving or screaming in the background, and we don't know what it is, we can't see it. But to me, that little clip is like more terrifying than anything in, you know, in a horror movie I've seen in the last 5 years, you know. So it's just something about the look of it, the feel of it, the unknown, and the rawness of it that just really, you know, it just makes it, you know, generates real fear, I think.
I mean, it plays on some of our most basic fears, you know, of first fear of the dark, right? You know, and our
Hmm.
almost unwillingness or discomfort that comes from being in a place where we don't have full visibility. And then the other component, obviously, is, or not obviously, but rather is just this notion of, you know, our brain will start making connections to things, whether they're there or not. It's the
Yeah,
atmosphere, the setting, the mood, the situation that can almost make
yeah.
that experience more terrifying than it would have been in other cases. And I think, as you're
Hmm.
rightfully said, when it comes to something that's more of a it takes a different point of view, those productions really rely largely on the shock value of either visual gags, whether it be the gore, or
Yeah,
really trying to unnerve you. What seems to be the most recent trend around really trying to make this metaphor of horror a as a theme for something like mental health, and then giving you these almost very existential kind of fears,
yeah,
which is a different kind of terror. It's not so much the horror of being afraid; it's the horror of your own mortality, or,
yeah,
or even your mentality in some cases.
yeah, yeah.
Now, do you see
Yeah.
yourself ever? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, like the horror nowadays, I think um I've noticed some horror, like horror shows and films, that I think they've kind of gone away from, you know, the scare part, and now I think they're trying more to make it an enjoyable, kind of like a campy feeling to it. I've noticed several horror movies recently where they've gone away from trying to scare people and make it actually, you know, scary, to this kind of like, I don't want to say goofy, but it's like a 80s vibe, you know, it's like kind of campy and things like that. So that's something else I've been noticing a lot of.
Yeah, it does move it away. I mean, it's horror in the sense that it has, you know, horrific things happen, but it doesn't necessarily carry on the
Hmm.
torch of the feeling you're supposed to get from the experience, which is
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
terror. It's more just the aesthetic of horror,
yeah,
for better or
yeah,
worse.
yeah.
And when you know when you're what does your journey to horror filmmaking look like? You know, you mentioned that you were, you know, saw the Blair Witch with your cousin, and that kind of, I'm sure,
Hmm.
inspired quite a bit. But when did the interest really begin for you, and when did you know that you really wanted to make horror films?
I think my interest began when I was a kid. I was actually, you know, I grew up in a kind of religious household, and so I actually wasn't allowed to watch too much horror. And so I would sneak out in the middle of the night, and I would, like, we had a small TV in the kitchen, and I would watch like Tales from the Crypt and things like that. And I became obsessed with it. And I think it was kind of that, um, you know, I think it was, you know, that, I don't know how to say it, but it was, you know, it was kind of that bringing up that really made horror this like, this, this forbidden fruit kind of thing. And so I just kind of became obsessed with it. Now that I'm older, and when I got older and, you know, could, you know, watch more, I just kind of, you know, ate it all up. And, you know, I first started doing film with my uncle. He was doing like family films and things like that. And you know, it was fun helping him out. But then, you know, after a couple projects, I was like, well, I'd really like to try this on my own. And, you know, I did a small zombie movie with, you know, some family, and it was terrible, but it was like I loved it. It was like just so fun to make and edit. And then, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I started moving forward with, you know, horror and horror films. And you know, after I did a few shorts, I was hired to do, it's a funny story. I was hired to do a family dinosaur movie, which is, it's called Jurassic Tale. I don't even think it's come out yet, but it was, you know, it I think a lot of filmmakers, they get caught in this like, they're chasing this big dream of being like the big Hollywood director and working on these huge projects. And I had kind of gotten stuck in that for a while. And so, you know, I did this big, you know, it wasn't a big movie, but it, you know, it was a bigger budget than I ever worked with. And to me, I was like, well, this could be like my starting point to have a a big budget feature. And man, after that was completed, it kind of drained me. Like I felt empty, and I was like I didn't hate it, but you realize like um you take your freedom for granted doing film like on your own. And when you're doing these bigger projects, you have to deal with the producers, and then it's just not fun at all. And it was after I did that dinosaur movie was when I decided to do the film The Unknown Visitor. And we had only made that for like $500, and it was kind of there that I realized, I don't need, huge budgets. I don't need any other people to kind of, make what I want to make. And that's kind of where I'm at today.
I really like that you shared that, because I think I would agree with you that there is always, the sentiment that you want, the aspiration is to get that big budget film, and become one of the single percentile of folks that actually get the chance to, work on these massive projects. But at the same time, it does seem like it pulls you away from what brings a lot of filmmakers into the art for the first place, which is this desire to create something that is special to them, not just something that is special to a lot of folks. And I think indie horror, particularly the past, I'd say the past 5 years, but this is by no means disregarding anything before that, but the past 5 years has really opened up as far as access and awareness is concerned, awareness being the most important thing, because we're just so starved for content now, because we've been trained to wait for the next week of releases and watch them in a weekend. So there is this appetite, I think, for originality and something to keep us going. And to that end, hopefully brings more attention to folks like yourself and others who are really trying to, create something that means something to them, but also appeals to a specific genre audience, which, the horror community is, I've long said, one of the most loyal fan bases out there, despite what, folks may think about the toxicity of some of it all. I also believe that I'll watch 90 minutes of a mediocre movie for 15 minutes of greatness, and it might become a classic in my eyes. So I think that there's a very loyal community of folks that not only open-minded, but also appreciative of the opportunity to go for something different or original, or something that's not always based in Hollywood.
Definitely, yeah.
And as far as your influences as far from a film perspective, are there any particular filmmakers or films, we've talked about Blair Witch, which I'm sure you mentioned has an inspiration, but aside from that, what films and filmmakers really got you thinking like, wow, that's something I want to do something like, or I really love what this person did there, or this movie just really spoke to me about, what I wanted to create, or just to reinforce your love for a genre?
I think it was a Spanish movie. It's called Record or Rec. That was a film that it just like blew me away. Even though I knew going in it was fake and all that, it felt so real, and it was so like raw and intense, and it freaked me out. Like, I mean, it was just nonstop craziness, and that to me that was another film that kind of boosted my inspiration. And then also I'm trying to think of some other. I'm a huge fan of a lot of Asian horror films. So, films like the original Shutter. I think it was, there's a new one that came out called The Medium that I thought was really well done, and, really creepy. I think a lot of the Asian horror, they kind of dig deep into their, cultures and their, myths and legends and things like that, which, really helps, bring out the, mystery and things like that. Other stuff, I'm a huge fan of authors like H.P. Lovecraft, and just the kind of weird, horror kind of stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, I would say, and Junji Ito, the author, he's another huge, inspiration. Just his weird, crazy drawing. I mean, you don't even if you don't read, you can just get his book. You can just flip through it, and it's like, what the heck is this? It's this crazy stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much my inspiration for what I do.
The Junji Ito drawings make the stuff in the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark book look like a real children's book. They
Yeah,
are,
yeah,
they're pretty out there.
yeah,
And I
definitely.
love what you or someone like Wreck, for example, is a film that it it succeeds. As you said, going into it, what you're about to watch is not real,
Hmm.
but because
Yeah,
you're so caught up in the tension that is created from the moment they go up to the building, the apartment on the top floor, to the person falling down the stairwell. There's just so
yeah,
much in that movie that keeps you guessing and thinking. And I think found footage films, I'm sure, and I'd get interested to hear your thoughts as well. Found footage films really succeed on that ability to sustain tension, to really not let
yeah,
you feel safe at any point in time, because the moment you
hmm,
feel safe, you start to realize you're watching a movie. So
yeah.
I'm curious here, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, with a lot of the found footage films, it puts you, I think it helps put you in the seat of the person, whether they're filming or whatever. It kind of puts you in that point of view, which is why I think some of them are so, successful at being creepy. And um yeah, I think it's that point of view where, especially the, first person kind of camera ones, it puts you as the cameraman, and that's especially with Last Radio Call. I That's why I didn't want to have the camera guy talking too much, or because I wanted the viewer to kind of be the cameraman, and just have the camera as like a, eyeball kind of floating around telling the story and filming.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your intercut between the interview style, kind of almost
Hmm.
self-made documentary approach, and then
Hmm.
interweaving some of the body cam footage, which again, there's some pretty harrowing scenes that you're exposed
Yeah.
to through, which I think again are all just there to entice the viewer into really getting into the world you're building for them. Because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I find that some of these even found footage films, I watched this on the TV behind me, but I almost find like sometimes they
Hmm.
benefit from being watched on something that's more analog, like one of those small
Yeah.
tube DVDs, because it gives you that
Yeah. Yeah.
same feeling of being that you're watching something you're not supposed to be seeing, but also it's
Yeah.
rough and it's been through something that you're about to get a deeper sense of.
Yeah, yeah. I actually think the new VHS movie, I think it's 94.
Yep.
Um, I think there's only one segment, but I think most of the segments, it looks like they recorded it through, they made it on, it looks like they filmed on VHS and then they put it on a screen and recorded off of that. Like it was really, I mean, downgrade, it really had that raw VHS look on that one. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, a few of the writers here had gotten together about a week and a half ago and talked about some of our
Hmm.
favorite films of last year, and VHS 94 was on
Hmm.
there for a lot of us,
Yeah.
because I think you pointed out, like, one, the stories were just unreal, but also they did have that analog feel to it. Aside from, I think, the one
Yeah.
that was first person view, was meant to look a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
That was pretty,
uh,
yeah, but yeah.
Now, when you think about making the difference between making short films and feature films, given that you've made so many short films, and you've also really done quite a few feature films, I think it's about four
Hmm.
more, and it looks like you had a few more in production or just completed as
Hmm.
well. What do you see to be the differences, and do you have a preference?
I mean, so obviously making a short film, it's faster, it's, easier, and you can experiment a little more. Um, I would say I definitely prefer the feature film, because I feel like a lot of times when you make a short, nowadays, I feel like everyone has made a short film. It's very easy, especially with like the phones now. It's so, when I had started making short films back when, the lights out thing had happened, and it was like a huge kind of phenomenon. And, so that's when I started making, the short films. And I had a few that did really well and that went viral. But um it can be it can be like a little frustrating, because you'll spend time on a short film that you think is like new and exciting, and then a few people will watch, and that's kind of it. But with like a feature film, I feel like you have something more to offer, and people will take it a little more seriously, and give it more thought, as opposed to like a little 2-minute short film. It's kind of become like a gag, where it's just like it's almost like a magic trick, where it's like, hey, look at this, and then the trick's over, and that's it. So I definitely prefer the longer feature films now. They just offer something that's longer lasting, and that's gonna be around for a while.
It's an interesting point you make about short films and just how there still is a big opportunity for more awareness to where to find them. Because I think I'd agree, say for channels like, the No Sleep channel, or I believe it was the Creepy TV one as well, there really were very few outlets for short films to get any sort of distribution more broadly, aside from hopefully you find a YouTube link or someone sends you one. It's more word of mouth. And given it's such a great way for folks to not only get out something that is relatively low barrier, but also, as kind of you did with Cop Cam and moving to Last Radio Call, it can also be a really good proof of concept. Do you have any thoughts around like what are ways in which the horror community could do more to support the making or the creators behind short films to increase that awareness? Because I think that, as we talked about, the community can be such a great flint for interest and intrigue, and even open up doors for other things. But at the same time, we're fighting for everyone's attention through seas of content now.
Yeah, I think if you see a short film and it does something special for you and you love it, I think the most important thing you can do is just share it. Like, share it to your social media, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, Facebook, because it's the sharing that really helps it take off. Whether another person sees it and then they share it, and then that's kind of how it becomes viral. Is people like it and they keep sharing it, and that's what really helps it get watched.
Yeah, virality is key. It's the new marketing campaign, I guess, is if you can get something to go organically viral, you can capture a wide audience that way.
Yeah, but it's really there's really not a science to it. Like, after I had made the Cop Cam, I'll admit, I thought, I knew the viral code and I can make another viral one. And it's kind of like I don't know how to say it, but it's like the harder you try to be viral, the less viral it actually is. And it's not something that you can there's not a formula for being viral. It's just a rare, alignment of the stars, I think, where it's a certain topic, a certain time of the year, a certain type, it's just there's a million things that go into it. And I mean, you just, what I've learned is just try to make something that's cool and that you think people might like, and you just, let it be what it is.
Yeah, the more you force something, I think the more it becomes less of what it's intending to be. So when it comes to going viral, it does have to have that organic growth to some extent. I mean, when we're talking about short films, particularly, I think if you're talking about a 15-second clip on, Facebook or TikTok or something, like it's a little different as far as how quickly that can catch. And going back to your interest in H.P. Lovecraft, have you ever considered doing found footage based on any of the stories or mythos in the world he's created through his writings?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I might plan something someday. I have to check out the legality of it, because I know a lot of his works are and I think they're public domain. But then some people say, well, they're in the public domain, but actually this one company owns some of the rights. So it's like, my biggest nightmare would be make a really cool film, about H.P. Lovecraft, and then someone comes out. So I don't know if he has family members left, but it would suck if, some random person came out and said, oh, you can't show that because I own the copyright. So it's something I'd probably just need to really dig into and see if it's possible. But yeah, I definitely love to make a Lovecraft type of found footage film.
Yeah, I feel like his writing and the way he writes characters and their points of view
Yeah,
almost lends itself to the medium quite well, because you really are almost inner monologuing the way in which a found footage film is showing you first person view of someone's
yeah,
experience.
yeah. And I think, in a way, Lovecraft was kind of the original, was kind of like the original, like, found footage style of horror, because everything, it's kind of like logs and people's diary entries and things like that. And I think that's what makes it so unique.
Yeah, his prose definitely stands out, particularly when you compare it to the
Hmm.
modern horror writing of folks like even Stephen
Yeah.
King, and even more modern like Grady Hendrix. Um,
Hmm.
and I know that Last Radio Call obviously came from another short film you did. Do you have any other short films that you like? I would love to expand upon something we did before and come back to it.
Uh, I think if I ever, mm, I mean, there was one short film I did that I love the concept. It's called Year Zero, and it's about like a pilot in a secret program, and he's sent back in time. We had, we made it with zero budget, so I mean, it was kind of hard to, really flesh out, how it'd be if a guy in a, US program went back in time and stuff like that. But I think time travel is a cool concept that, if it had a decent budget, it could be a really strong found footage concept.
I think there was it Benson and Hedges who have been experienced kind of playing around with the time travel notions or the concepts
Hmm.
in doing it from an indie perspective. And I think there is so much more that while there is a you know technology and budget can give you some of the visual aesthetic,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
seems like people really are now they're now looking for something that's more, I want to say science based, but rooted in almost fact and reality, so that they can really start to think
yeah,
more abstractly about the potential for it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've also noticed, like, with the short films, where if I make a short film and it has a scary looking ghost, or it's something about a ghost or paranormal, it'll do way more better than, like, the Year Zero. It it almost got, it got very little views in the beginning. So I think sci-fi and horror, there's a huge, like, gap where, if you do sci-fi, there has to be a horror element to it. I'm actually working on a kind of a sci-fi movie next, but it's got like a strong horror element, so hopefully people will still latch onto it.
There is, you mentioned something interesting about there's kind of this how the movies you made, particularly ones that have some sort of ghost or supernatural element,
Mhm,
get more views or get more attention.
mhm.
Do you find that maybe like the format of found footage and the way it's presented almost lends itself better to that, or do you think it's more just people just decide what other thoughts might you have around why people connect that so strongly, or draw to it more so?
Yeah, I definitely do think, like, ghosts and things like that do better with found footage. I can't really explain why. I think it's just like the old, I don't know. I don't know. It's something I can't really explain, but there's like a weird nostalgia of seeing ghost in a old found footage looking camera footage, that it just freaks people out, I guess. I don't know.
I think it
It's one of
confirms the
those
things we don't want to almost agree with, our
yeah.
subconscious fears, which is, I can't think of many films that are, paranormal films that don't have a found footage that don't take that medium and take more of a
Hmm.
traditional kind of narrative third person view, that are all that
Yeah.
scary. They tend to be affecting, right? Like Devil's Backbone is a
Hmm.
very emotional film, and it has parts
Yeah.
that certainly can be a bit on edge and suspenseful, but as far as really getting to your core of fear of like scaring you, it's almost as if it confirms the things we are denying in a way by putting it in that
Yeah.
medium.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, but I mean, I definitely noticed, when there's some kind of ghost or something involved, it just does a lot more. Gets more views, people like it more. And then when you try to experiment and do something new, it just no one will watch it. I mean, some people will, but it's just yeah, it's just one of those weird things.
Yeah, I always wonder what's the, it's so hard to get a sense of what, that kind of what we mentioned about the virality angle. Like, you don't really know what's going to catch on. There are some, things that could be fall back on, like, again, paranormal and found footage do have a lot of symmetry or harmony, but I definitely think there is an audience. I'm speaking personally here, so I'll put that out there. But I think that as far as the found footage genre goes, there's so much still to be done around other aspects. Particularly looking at monsters. I think we haven't had a great Bigfoot movie in a long time, and something like found footage could go so well with that angle of myths and legends.
I think if you execute it well, the people will come. If it's well made and it's got a good story, I think that people will come regardless.
Now, you mentioned you're working on a few other films, or you mentioned you're working on a horror sci-fi film. What else could folks expect from you, for 2022 and beyond?
So I just recently released a new film. It's called Deadware, and it's a screen life film. It takes place in like the late 90s when the webcam had just come out and things like that. And it's about two friends. They're on the webcam, and they come across this haunted kind of like online browser game, and that's on Amazon now. And then I just shot another found footage film in a ghost town, and it's going to be called A Town Full of Ghosts. And it's about a couple who moves into this ghost town, and they're trying to like renovate it and make it this tourist destination, and they kind of stumble across something scary there. And then I'm working on a new one. It's kind of like I can't say too much yet, but it's kind of like a UFO kind of found footage film, horror sci-fi film.
Those all sound super appealing, especially the last one. Definitely hits on some fears that I had watching Fire in the Sky when I was younger and reading Comedians.
It's definitely based. It's definitely inspired by Fire in the Sky. Because that freaked me out as a kid. It still freaks me out when I watch it, but that's I'm trying to get that same feeling in a found footage format.
Yeah, it'd be so interesting to see what that will look like, especially in how people receive it now, because I think there is almost an awareness of, there's no longer the ignorance of believing that we're probably the only intelligent life in the galaxy, but also, and you have, like, was it last year, the CIA or something like that, declassified documents that they found some interesting stuff. So
I think the whole UFO thing is I think it's stopped becoming like a joke and just a little and like a myth, or I think it's definitely gain momentum as something serious now. And I think to me that it's a little more scary, because it's like, okay, these things might be real, and what do they want from us? Are they like are they our masters? Are they here to kill us? Are we done? There's a lot of questions that kind of arise with that kind of thing, which is why I think they've been kind of keeping it a secret so long.
Yeah, it is another thing to add to the existential list of dread that's currently culminating in our current time. Like, what's going to kill us first? The aliens, climate change.
Kill us next. Yeah, definitely.
Well, Isaac, this has been a great conversation, and I wanted to end with just, where can folks find and connect and follow your work, and what's the best way for them to follow your journey?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I go by Cabby2002. I'm on Facebook, and we have a YouTube channel, No Sleep Films. And you can find all my stuff on Amazon and places like that.
Yeah, and I want to remind everyone that Last Radio Call will be available. We're recording this the week of release, I believe, the 21st of January. Should be available on all video demand streaming platforms then. Highly encourage everyone to check it out, especially if you love found footage films, because I do believe what you've tapped into, Isaac, is not just a way of taking found footage into not only your own new methodology, but also harmonizing with this new body cam angle that has become even more prominent in the zeitgeist, given recent events of the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you for the time, Isaac. And this is Matt from
Yeah,
Macabre
thanks for
Daily.
having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, thank you. Same here.